I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler, for his questions.
Thank you. Let me say prior to my statement that I totally agree with the chairman in his observations on 702 and on the distinctions we made in our bill between national security and counterintelligence operations on the one hand and investigations of domestic crimes on the other, where you should get a warrant, where you'd normally need a warrant. Director Wray, I'd like to ask you for your help putting the events of the last few days into context. To set the stage, over the summer, in an interview with the New York Times, President Trump stated, quote, "When Nixon came along, out of courtesy, the FBI started reporting to the Department of Justice. But the FBI person really reports directly to the President of the United States," close quote. Director Wray, you have one direct report to the executive branch. To whom do you directly report?
I directly report to the Deputy Attorney General, who then reports to the Attorney General.
Thank you. Has President Trump ever asked you to sidestep the chain of command and report directly to him?
No.
Also, over the summer, former Director Comey testified that during a private dinner, President Trump told him, quote, "I need loyalty. I expect loyalty." Has President Trump ever asked you for loyalty?
I have never been asked by the President to take any kind of loyalty oath. My loyalty is to the Constitution, to the laws of this country, and to the good men and people of America.
Thank you. Last week, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to one felony count of lying to the FBI about conversations he had with the Russian ambassador. I would like to put President Trump's initial Twitter reaction up on the screen. I won't read it, but I will simply say he claims here to have known that General Flynn committed a crime at the time General Flynn was fired. There's some controversy as to whether the President actually wrote this tweet. The White House later claimed that it came from the President's private attorney. But I'm not sure that it matters who wrote it, given the Department of Justice's litigating position that these tweets are, quote, "official statements of the President of the United States," close quote. A few clarifying questions, Mr. Director. In your experience at the Department of Justice, have you ever prosecuted a case involving a charge of obstruction of justice?
Yes.
And sections 1503, 1505, and 1512 of Title 18 make it a crime if someone corruptly, quote, "obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding," close quote. What does it mean to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede an official proceeding?
Congressman, that would require me to get into kind of a legal discussion. It's been a while since I've looked at the case law on the subject. I do have somebody who's been both a line prosecutor and a senior Justice Department official and a defense attorney, that sometimes the language of that statute can be trickier than folks at first appreciate.
Fair enough. And I'm glad you're respecting the fact that I only have 5 minutes. Does obstruction of justice require specific intent? In other words, does a prosecutor have to establish that the defendant had knowledge of the official proceeding and intended to obstruct it?
Sitting here right now, Congressman, I don't remember the specifics of exactly what the intent requirement is.
Okay, so you can't say if it matters that a suspect, well, does it matter that a suspect has knowledge of a crime when he attempts to wave off criminal investigators? In other words, if a suspect has knowledge of a crime and he attempts to wave off criminal investigators, does that constitute obstruction of justice?
Well, certainly the defendant's knowledge and state of mind and intent is a critical element of the offense.
Okay. Later that day, the President tweeted this claim that we'll put up there. And in effect, he accuses former Director Comey of giving false testimony. Mr. Comey testified that President Trump urged him to be lenient with Michael Flynn, producing a note in which he quoted the President saying, I hope you can let this go. In multiple appearances before Congress, Attorney General Sessions appears to have corroborated both the fact of the meeting and the gist of the conversation between the President and Director Comey. Director Wray, do you have any reason to doubt the testimony of Director Comey or Attorney General Sessions on this point?
Congressman, the questions you're asking go directly to what Special Counsel Mueller is investigating. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to be weighing in on that in this setting.
You don't think you can say whether you have reason to doubt the veracity of a statement because that might be under investigation?
Congressman, the question you're asking me, and I appreciate the reasons for the question, but the questions you're asking me would be asking me to weigh in on witnesses in the course of an investigation that's ongoing, and I don't think that's appropriate for me to do.
Fair enough. At your confirmation hearing, you testified that you would, quote, consider any effort to tamper with Director Mueller's investigation unacceptable and inappropriate. That any such effort would need to be dealt with very sternly and appropriately indeed. Since your confirmation, has the President ever contacted you about the special counsel's investigation? Has the Attorney General or anybody else at the White House?
No.
Okay, my final question is, the President's tirade ended with one final tweet where he says your reputation is in tatters. After years of, well, Director Wray, and it's up there. We have heard other veterans of the FBI and the Department of Justice push back against this attack on the reputation of the FBI. With the time I have, but we haven't heard from you. With the time I have left, will you respond to this tweet by the President? Is the FBI's reputation in tatters?
Mr. Chairman, may I have time to answer this question because it's something that matters to me a great deal.
Please.
Congressman, there is no shortage of opinions out there. What I can tell you is that the FBI that I see is tens of thousands of agents and analysts and staff working their tails off to keep Americans safe from the next terrorist attack, gang violence, child predators, spies from Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. The FBI that I see is tens of thousands of brave men and women who are working as hard as they can to keep people that they will never know safe from harm. And the FBI that I see is reflected in folks like the new class of agents that I swore in at Quantico 2 days ago, hard-charging, high-integrity people, people like the hostage rescue team and SWAT teams that we send out into all sorts of danger with almost no notice. The FBI that I see is people, decent people, committed to the highest principles of integrity and professionalism and respect. The FBI that I see is respected and appreciated by our partners in federal, state, and local law enforcement, in the intelligence community, by our foreign counterparts, both law enforcement and national security, in something like 200 countries around the globe. That's the FBI that I see. Now, do we make mistakes? You bet we make mistakes, just like everybody who's human makes mistakes. And when we make mistakes, there are independent processes like that of the outside independent Inspector General that will drive and dive deep into the facts surrounding those mistakes. And when that independent fact-finding is complete, we will hold our folks accountable if that's appropriate.
That's very fine. Thank you very much. I yield back.